In this segment, I'd like to focus on anxiety disorders. We'll talk about PTSD, generalized anxiety disorders, and panic attacks. A generalized anxiety disorder is pretty much just what the title says. You're anxious, you feel anxiety about everything, not something in specific. It's not like a fear of snakes. You feel anxious all the time. It's this overwhelming sense of anxiety that you just can't shake. People who experience generalized anxiety disorder worry a lot. They feel, they really dread the future. They're concerned about harmful things happening, and they cannot stop worrying. It's a persistent and uncontrollable worry. So if somebody has generalized anxiety disorder and another person says, so just snap out of it. I mean, you can't by definition, right? By definition, it's persistent and uncontrollable. People who experience generalized anxiety disorder struggle to concentrate and focus. They may have shakes, motor tension. Generalized anxiety disorder is associated with having too little of a particular kind of neurotransmitter called GABA. And if you'll remember from early on in the semester, GABA is the major inhibitory neurotransmitter in our system. So if you don't have enough of that inhibitory neurotransmitter, then you can't calm down. GABA is the stuff that, we need to go to sleep and to meditate and to do yoga and to calm ourselves during a peaceful walk. But people with generalized anxiety disorder don't have enough of that to calm down. Another kind of disorder of anxiety is PTSD, which stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD is a disorder in which something really awful happened in your past. You had some situation that you couldn't control that was so bad you were afraid that it might kill you. This could include soldiers at war. People are shooting at them and literally trying to kill them. This could be survivors of child abuse. This could include people who've been attacked or abused or mugged or raped. All of those kinds of abuse where you might think, oh my God, I'm not going to make it out of this. You can have PTSD from a car accident. The symptoms associated with PTSD can take months or years to appear after the traumatic incidents. Sometimes someone will have gone through a traumatic incident and then they seem fine for a year, and then later the PTSD comes in. And as you remember from our neurotransmitter lecture, PTSD is associated with an overactivation of that warrior system, right? The sympathetic nervous system. It's when your nervous system thinks that you are still under attack when actually now you're safe. So your whole body is ready for that fight or flight response or freeze response, even though the thing that had the potential to harm you is no longer present. You've probably heard of phobias. That's another kind of anxiety, but it's sort of the opposite of generalized anxiety. Generalized anxiety disorder, you're anxious about everything. A phobia is very targeted. It's very specific. You're afraid of one or a few things in particular. And it's a fear that you can't control. So for example, I have a bit of a phobia of snakes. I hate snakes. But I don't have to work with them, so it's not a clinical level because it doesn't compromise my life. It makes me very careful hiking in the summer, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. So fear is only a phobia if it interferes with your life. About 10% of us experience some phobia at some point in our life, and that phobia could be a fear of blood or needles or dogs or scary insects like spiders or snakes or airplanes or heights. So specific things. Why do we develop specific phobias? Well, there's at least two reasons. The first reason we already talked about. Remember way back when we talked about classical conditioning, we talked about a very important study called the Little Albert study, where this little baby was taught or trained to be terrified of fuzzy things, fuzzy white things. Some people think that phobias come from experiences like that. So maybe you are phobic now of circus clowns because when you were a little baby, a circus clown scared you terribly. Now, the thing with classical conditioning is we don't have a lot of conscious access to the event that caused the initial phobia. So those are when you're phobic of something, but you don't really know why. Evolution also seems to play a part in phobias. We are much more likely to be phobic of things that would have killed our ancestors than we are to be phobic of things that our ancestors didn't have to worry about. Panic disorder. Have you ever had a panic attack? Ugh, I had one once. They're horrible. It feels like you're having a heart attack. In fact, a sizable number of people who go to the ER thinking that they're having a heart attack are actually having a panic attack. But they need to go anyway because it's very hard to tell the difference between a heart attack and a panic attack. But a panic attack feels like you are absolutely in terror. Your brain sort of just freezes. You feel you can't breathe. It's like someone's sitting on your chest. It's incredibly scary. Panic attacks are something, it's hard for you to feel them coming on. They sort of start suddenly and they can reoccur. It's a really intense fear. And in fact, people who have panic attacks or panic disorder can become so afraid of another panic attack that they become afraid of going outside. So then, in addition to having panic disorder, they develop agoraphobia, which is a fear of going outside. I also want to tell you briefly about obsessive compulsive disorders. Obsessive compulsive disorder has two parts. First is the obsession. There are thoughts that become uncontrollable. They sort of flood you. Obsessions can center around inflicting harm. They can center around an obsession with filth or dirtiness or the need to be cleanly. Someone can obsess about a fear that a particular thing will happen. And then in order to control the obsession, people develop compulsions, which are sort of rituals, behavioral rituals like washing the hands or checking the doors that help people feel calmer. They calm them down. They temporarily keep the obsession at bay. So obsessive compulsive disorder involves persistent, unwanted thoughts that you control with these behaviors, or you attempt to control. Disorders related to obsessive compulsive disorder include hoarding. You may have seen a television show about hoarding. Hoarding is said to occur when people save everything. They feel a need to save everything, presumably to fill some other psychological hole. And they end up saving so many things that it becomes impossible for them to use their home anymore. You'll find little pathways to get to different rooms, and they can't use the appliances anymore because they're covered with things. Skin or hair picking is another disorder it's a way of managing anxiety. Someone will pick at their skin or pick at their hair for an extended period of time. While someone's doing it, it's a distraction. It's a way to calm themselves.